Shockwaves across Canada, Saskatchewan reveals ambition to break away from Canadian Confederation. A political tremor is reverberating across Canada as Saskatchewan emerges at the forefront of a growing Western autonomy movement. Once dismissed as a peripheral voice in separatist discourse, the province has vaulted to the center of a national debate on federalism, resource control, and the future of regional representation in the Canadian Confederation. This isn't just a fleeting protest. It's a culmination of deep historical grievances, economic friction, and cultural divergence that stretch back to the founding days of the country. Many Saskatchewan residents feel their voices have been routinely drowned out by centralized decision-making in Ottawa, which they believe disproportionately serves the interests of Ontario and Quebec while marginalizing the prairie provinces. Premier Scott Moe has increasingly voiced public frustration with federal policies that he claims directly threaten Saskatchewan's economic lifeblood. Key industries, agriculture, potash, and fossil fuels are not only vital to the province's economy, but integral to its identity. While Moe has not explicitly called for separation, he has made it clear he would not obstruct a grassroots-driven referendum, should public will demand one. This openness represents a fundamental shift. The government of Saskatchewan is now signaling that Ottawa's refusal to accommodate prairie priorities may leave voters little choice but to consider a more radical path. Moe's push for 10 federal policy changes, including repealing the emissions cap and allowing coal power plants to continue operating, reflects a broader strategy to reassert provincial authority over key economic levers. Grassroots organizations like Unified Grassroots have emerged as powerful engines of mobilization. Fueled by outrage over federal environmental regulations and growing concerns about federal overreach, these groups argue that only a dramatic rebalancing of provincial and federal powers can secure Saskatchewan's long-term prosperity. They advocate using a sovereignty referendum not necessarily to break away, but to force Ottawa into negotiating more favorable terms. Their approach channels populist energy into a formal political strategy that blurs the line between protest and constitutional upheaval. The growing momentum has prompted countermeasures. The Saskatchewan NDP has tabled the Keep Saskatchewan in Canada Act, aimed at forestalling separatist momentum by increasing the threshold for referendum petitions from 15% to 30% of eligible voters. It also seeks to curtail the Premier's unilateral ability to call such referendums. Framed as a safeguard for democratic process, the bill has been lambasted by Moe as an undemocratic attempt to silence public debate. NDP leader Carla Beck has argued that even flirtation with separation could scare off investment, depress housing markets, and paralyze economic development, echoing the economic stagnation Quebec experienced during its separation referendums. Saskatchewan is not alone. Its western neighbor Alberta is also locked in a deepening rift with Ottawa. Premier Danielle Smith has raised the possibility of a 2026 independence referendum if citizen support reaches critical mass. Her government has already lowered the bar for referendums and passed the Alberta Sovereignty Within United Canada Act, empowering the province to resist the implementation of federal policies deemed harmful. Alberta is also forging ahead with plans to exit the Canada Pension Plan and replace the RCMP with a provincial police force, moves that are reshaping the provincial-federal relationship in unprecedented ways. Alberta's grievances mirror those of Saskatchewan, particularly around the energy sector. Ottawa's climate and energy policies are viewed by many in Alberta as hostile to the economic engine that has historically underpinned both the province's prosperity and Canada's national finances. Federal decisions on pipelines, emissions caps, and carbon taxes have fed a narrative that central Canada benefits, while the West pays the price. Prime Minister Mark Carney, despite advocating for national unity and infrastructure investments, is viewed by many in the prairies as continuing the Trudeau legacy, top-down governance that prioritizes urban progressivism over rural realities. Carney's infrastructure strategy, including trade diversification and internal trade liberalization, is intended to bolster the national economy and reduce dependence on the U.S. But in the West, such initiatives are often interpreted as performative gestures that fail to address the specific burdens federal policy imposes on resource-rich provinces. The perception that Ottawa governs for the Laurentian elite, not for rural producers or energy workers, is only deepening the East-West divide. Amid this rising discontent, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has gained political ground. By pledging to scrap the federal carbon tax, accelerate the approval of natural resource projects, and give provinces more authority over economic matters, Poilievre has positioned himself as the political voice of the alienated West. His proposal to share natural resource revenues with Indigenous communities also aims to undercut liberal messaging by promoting local empowerment while respecting Indigenous sovereignty. Poilievre has also promised to overhaul federal immigration and housing policies, aligning with Western concerns that population surges driven by Ottawa's targets are exacerbating infrastructure strain and affordability crises in mid-sized prairie cities. The political dynamic unfolding in Saskatchewan and Alberta is more than a protest movement. It's a structural challenge to the existing Confederation. The West isn't just asking for respect, it's demanding systemic change. While outright independence remains a legal and economic quagmire, the push for autonomy is shifting the Overton window of what's politically acceptable. The cost of this standoff could be immense. Economists warn that capital flight, workforce attrition, and investor hesitancy would likely follow even a credible referendum campaign. Businesses are already quietly expressing concern that serious talk of secession could make the prairies a less stable environment for long-term investment. At stake is the very cohesion of the Canadian Confederation. To avoid further unraveling, the federal government must engage not through platitudes, but through tangible reforms. That includes reassessing fiscal arrangements, empowering municipalities with new revenue tools, and addressing structural inefficiencies that leave regional governments overstretched and undersupported. The struggle for autonomy is also manifesting in deeply divisive cultural debates. In Saskatchewan, the government's policy requiring parental consent for students under 16 to be addressed by their chosen name or gender identity in schools sparked national outcry. Critics argue the policy violates human rights. Supporters claim it protects parental authority. Alberta's government is now considering even more aggressive legislation, including restrictions on gender-affirming medical treatments and transgender participation in women's sports. These measures crystallize a broader rift over who controls cultural policy, Ottawa or the provinces. As national tensions escalate, Canada's leaders face a profound test. Will they double down on centralization and risk further alienating Western provinces? Or will they embrace a renewed federalism that redistributes power and responsibility in a way that better reflects regional diversity? The answer may determine whether Canada remains a unified nation or begins to fray at its seams.